Hey, everybody, this is Bridget Danner, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Alan Hopkins, to discuss the testing of female hormones. Hi, Alan.
Hey, Bridget, thanks for having me on today. Super excited.
I'm excited too. I feel like we're walking into a little bit of a muddy swamp, but we're going there together. so,
Yes, we'll have
so
to
that's
hold hands.
that's important. So I did an article a month or two ago about testing the thyroid. And that is not as murky. It's pretty easy to recommend which blood labs to run. And then I got the question for some people, well, what about testing female hormones? Like, which ones do you recommend, Bridget? And I was like, eh. And that's why I called you because I don't run blood labs for female hormones that much, but I have reviewed them when I was working in the fertility field. Everybody had them. So I would look at them. And so I do think they have some value. But let's talk about the pros and cons of blood testing versus urine testing. I don't know if you're experienced with saliva testing. I used to do that, but I haven't done it in a while. Um, how should we get this combo started?
Well, we can first, talk about, why we test these hormones and, what they're important for. And why
Okay,
would
that's a good
anybody
idea.
ever want to get these things tested anyway?
That's a good
And,
start.
and the truth is, there are, female hormones in men too. So this conversation is not necessarily limited to just women. We do measure estradiol in men, and it turns out that the blood test for estrogen is very helpful for men and not quite as helpful for women. And
Why
so,
is
so
that?
we can talk about that. Well, okay, so a man's main hormone is, of course, testosterone, right? So if men have a lot of testosterone, they build muscle, they feel great, they have a lot of vigor, and so on. However, what we're having right now is a crisis, right, of obesity. And,
Yes.
uh, and we found out that there's an enzyme inside our belly fat, inside the adipocytes, which are the fat cells. This enzyme actually takes normal testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So
Aromatase,
literally,
right?
that's right, 5' aromatase. You're very smart. And so what happens is, literally, as men start to grow their waistline, they become more feminized. And if you'll notice, characteristically, what tends to happen is they tend to mellow. They tend to develop man boobs, and sometimes they can be a little bit more irritable because men do not do well with high levels of estrogen. And if we can turn off that 5' aromatase, then we can actually increase that man's testosterone, which will help him, by the way, lose weight. So measuring estradiol and testosterone in men is very, very helpful when you use it in blood. And so when it comes to men, I think it's pretty clear that testing blood work is very helpful, and particularly estradiol and testosterone.
So I think I'm learning, I think I'm getting a clue here as you say that, which is that men are more consistent with their hormones than women. Is that one reason it's better for men?
Yeah, well, I mean, the life cycle of men is very similar to women. As we go through our preteen and teen years, we have this erratic release of testosterone, and that can lead to irritability, aggressiveness, and the acne that we see in our teens. And then as men age, just like women go through menopause, men go through something called andropause, where their testosterone levels tend to decline. The problem that we're seeing today, and what I'm talking about really, is a man who may be 20 or 30 or 40 years old who is nowhere near andropause, but is having massive problems with making too much estrogen because of the belly fat that guy has obtained over the years.
Mm.
And so, with the obesity epidemic, we're seeing a lot of problems with aromatization. So we're seeing that 5' aromatase taking testosterone and shunting it to estrogen. And
Mm.
that's making it really difficult for men to want to go and lose the weight because it literally affects their mood and their sense of well-being. And
So they
so,
feel worse while they're losing the weight, potentially.
yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah, as they gain more and more weight, they have less energy and they feel worse. And it's just kind of a bad cycle for them. So, if you measure the estradiol and you find out that it's really high, you can give medications. There's medicine called Arimidex, which you can give men, and it's an estrogen blocker that we sometimes will use in females that have breast cancer. But we give that to men just a couple times a week, and it shuts off that production of the estrogen. And that allows them hopefully to lose some weight. And typically men will accumulate water weight as their estradiol levels go high. So I think, so I think that, when it comes to, if you're talking about which test is better, just think about it this way. Men are simple. Okay, we're very simple creatures, just in general. So if you just remember that, you're going to remember simple tests, blood tests for men. And that pretty much takes care of men. That's just my opinion. Now, females, of course, are much more complicated. Would you like to talk about females since you're a female?
I would, but I'm glad we talked about men because this community is all women, but we're caring for men who don't go to the doctor and getting that belly fat and having some trouble with their sex life, perhaps. And this is all the stuff that is important. I put on the Facebook and on our Zoom here that we actually have a new supplement to block that aromatase, and it's called Estro Quench. So it can be used for men or women, no prescription needed. So
that's awesome.
It's perfectly to this conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a more natural solution, which I always like more natural solutions. So yeah, that's great. So if we are talking to a bunch of women out there, and you have a man who you love and care about, and he's accumulating a little too much belly fat, and he seems a little irritable or a little less energetic, and you want to really help him out, then checking his testosterone levels can be helpful, but also check his estradiol levels and see if they're elevated. And it sounds to me like you have a solution potentially to lower the estradiol level if it's high. If the estradiol level gets lowered, what happens to the testosterone? It goes higher. And so therefore men feel better. So it is important to test for it and recognize it, because you can really help a person feel better.
You know what? I'm glad we're talking about this too, Alan, because I'm just launching this product and I said that this is the one area where I really would prefer you to test and assume that you have high estrogen or low estrogen, because I think that we read things, kind of everybody thinks they have high estrogen lately. And maybe for a lot of men, it's true that you're seeing, but for women, it's not necessarily that you have high estrogen. It's that you have all your hormones low, or that you have low progesterone. So I think I'm glad we're getting into the testing options, because this is, of all the supplements I put out, I'm like, I prefer you to know something about your estrogen levels before you go and take a supplement.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to taking anything, whether it's medication or a supplement, it's always nice to know if you truly need it. And that's what the blood tests can oftentimes help us, is they can point us to the problem, and then we can focus in on that problem and fix it. And by the way, it's another great way to see if the product actually works. So if you have a man who has high levels of estradiol, and we put him on that supplement, and we just measure it over time, then we're going to know where that supplement works. And that's awesome, because if it's working, then people are super excited about taking it. And so,
true.
Yeah, holding people accountable and giving them the data that they need to know that they're actually getting better helps with compliance.
Okay. So let's talk about women. Let's talk about first pros and cons of blood testing, what you've seen.
Yeah, so the blood tests for women are not as helpful. And let me just explain the reason why. First of all, we have releasing hormones from the brain that we can measure, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And again, this is another difference between men and women. As men get older, guess what fails? Their brain. And so it's true. And so they stop making FSH and LH. And so when you measure follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, you'll see that those levels going very low, and therefore your testosterone levels will go low. Women are the exact opposite. As they age, their brain kicks it into high gear. And as the ovaries stop making the estrogen and the progesterone, the brain starts sending really high signals of FSH and LH. So if a woman's wondering, am I in menopause yet or whatever, they can actually measure the follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone in the bloodstream. And if they're high, if the FSH, for example, is above 41 with the Quest labs, then that indicates that they're very likely in menopause. So blood testing for menopause can be very helpful when we see very low levels of estrogen and progesterone, and very high levels of follicle stimulating hormone, particularly if it's above the measurement of 41. That almost always indicates that a woman is in menopause. So
Alan,
that's when it's helpful.
is this like a test you usually run on day 3 of the cycle? Is that
Okay,
correct?
so yeah, so I'm talking about women who, well, first of all, I'm talking about the benefits of the blood tests. And so,
Okay.
first of all, I was saying they're limited because of cycles, and that's exactly why blood tests aren't
Okay.
quite as
So the
helpful.
benefits are that you can maybe see if you're in menopause or
Correct. Right.
closing in on it. And yeah,
Yes.
I used to work a lot in fertility, as I mentioned, and we would like to see that too, because say you're 42 or whatever, and you're trying to get pregnant, you're not in menopause yet, but you want to see kind of how close you are towards it
Right.
versus not.
And some women actually are they go into menopause early, and
Some women do. It's true. That's true.
they don't know, they start having irregular periods, and then maybe they were on birth control for a time and they weren't quite sure. And but in general, blood tests are helpful for diagnosing whether or not a person looks like they're entering into menopause or solidly in menopause. Outside of that, what are blood tests helpful in women for when it comes to hormones would be PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. And what that is it's brought about, generally speaking, and the most common reason is from really high insulin levels. So we can measure insulin, it's a blood test, and if it's real high in the bloodstream, associated with real high testosterone levels, then that's pretty suggestive of PCOS. Women do not tolerate high testosterone levels really well. So why does that happen? I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. When you have high insulin, and believe me, there's a lot of people out there that have it. We have 86 million pre-diabetics, people whose sugars are just a little too high, and then we have 29 million diabetics. But as we go on the road to diabetes, the first thing we tend to see for most people is super high insulin levels. And I don't know, you probably didn't want to talk about insulin, but I'm just bringing it up for PCOS because it's so important and it's so undiagnosed. Is that if you have really high levels of insulin, insulin's made by the pancreas, and its job is to keep your blood sugar down. It's overworking when we're eating too many carbs and eating terrible. And so one of the things it can do is it can actually screw up those releasing hormones, the FSH and LH signaling. And that FSH and LH gets so screwed up in its signal that it tells the ovaries to take the estrogen and make testosterone. I mean, take cholesterol and make testosterone instead of estrogen. So this is why women will start missing periods, and that's why they'll start getting acne and hair growth and all that kind of stuff and irritability. It's literally because the testosterone levels are increasing. So for blood tests, I find blood tests most helpful in looking for women, in looking for PCOS screening tests, and also looking for women who may be entering into menopause and they just sort of want to know. Those are the two main things. Okay. Outside of that, I think a better test is a test which is a urine test that you know a lot about, called Dutch, and Precision Analytical is sort of who we work with, and they have these urine kits, and they send them to your house, and you urinate on these strips 4 or 5 times a day. And you actually can look at a lot of different things, not only the estrogen, but the estrogen metabolites. And also it measures cortisol, your adrenal gland. And so you can look at your cortisol pattern over time and so on. But I find that test to give a lot more information. And you probably know a lot more about it than I do. So
yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. And I think
yeah.
this, what you said, makes a lot of sense so far about the PCOS and the menopause. Again, if you are going through fertility treatment, you probably will get day 3 and like day 21 blood tests, which I think have some value for sure. But the Dutch test is for everybody else in between with PMS, heavy cycle, acne, moodiness, spotting, you name it, pretty much. So as you can see, you can run it at pretty much any age from like, a couple years out of cycling, or into cycling, like age 15 or something, through into menopause, because you're still making hormones in after menopause. So there's no age, barrier there. And it looks at all kinds of conditions, looks at adrenal patterns, which is really interesting for people to see where they're crashing, or if you have high cortisol at night, maybe that's a sign of an infection. Yes, it looks how you break down estrogen, which is important for like cancer prevention. It looks how you break down testosterone to see if that's becoming like an inflammatory condition in your body, going to acne and hair growth and that kind of a thing. Looks a little bit at like some detox capacities, like COMT, enzyme capacity. Now it's added neurotransmitters in there a bit, B12, like they didn't used to have that. Melatonin is in there. So it's a really comprehensive test to run. And I run it twice. And I think that, it's probably good to run at any stage that is feeling difficult for you. So, what else can I tell you about it? Yeah, like you said,
well,
at home.
you had a very expanded presentation there on it. I mean, my feeling on it is it gives you a ton of data, and it's really helpful for people, particularly with the Dutch testing, to actually sit down with somebody for probably 40 minutes or an hour even to go over all the data, because it can be a lot of data to sort of sort through. So I always recommend that with Dutch testing, you get a Dutch expert who can actually help you through the results. So just so you can understand it, because even me, who, I've done literally thousands of consultations with people on lab tests and looked over a lot of things. It's a very complicated data set.
It is. Yeah. And it has nice graphics
a
and
lot
stuff.
of really good information though, and all for a pretty reasonable price for the amount that you get with it. And that's probably another advantage, by the way, if we measure, we can talk about saliva for a second and blood compared to this. So one of the cons of saliva and of blood is sometimes it can be quite a bit more expensive for the amount of data that you're getting. So if you, certainly on our site, when you go and you order labs, ordering blood tests can be a little bit more expensive than the Dutch test relative to all the information you get. Because the Dutch test does hit the adrenals, and it hits all the female hormones, and then all these other things you talked about, the detox pathways. They just added the neurotransmitters and so on. And so there's a lot of really good information on there.
Yeah.
So that's why we added the Dutch. We didn't actually have the Dutch, by the way, on our platform until we started talking to people like you and others that were just like, hey, come on.
Well, I was the same when I was in school for functional coaching. They didn't present the Dutch. They were doing saliva testing, and I was hearing about the Dutch. I'm like, what's this Dutch all about? I want to get in on that. And I think, I have heard some potential cons, like, like the paper. I've heard like the paper isn't really meant for this kind of testing and could be not accurate. To be honest, I haven't fully looked into that as much as maybe I could have. I just have never run into any kind of conflict with the precision analytical. Like I've never gotten the sense that the data was flawed or that, they weren't on the up and up. They have a lot of great videos on their site, which I think is just dutchtest.com. But yeah, it is a lot to take in. And once you find out, okay, well, it's going to be hard to see just reading the paper, but you can say, well, I do have high estrogen, or why does my cortisol go in this weird pattern? Then what do you do about it? That's understanding it. And that's really where your practitioner comes in. So you now offer this that people can order on the link we have here on the Facebook. You can order the Dutch, you can order some of these blood female tests. You can order thyroid panels on here, which is fantastic. You can also, as a private client, get a Dutch through us. So I'm going to present a couple options. One is if you become a private client, we can order a Dutch for you at kind of the best price because it's like direct to us. However, if you want to run your test first, maybe because you're a practitioner, or some people just want to see it, they don't want to sign up for the coaching until they see it, then you can bring that results to us. And we have had that happen as well. We actually have also had people bring your lab work, Alan, that I didn't even send them to your lab to bring, show me their complete blood count and everything. So we're always happy to take, especially a great company like Alan, like a reputable labs, recent results. So you can also go that way, run your own stuff. And if you're like, I need a second opinion on this, then come back to us. And we can arrange that and maybe just say, hey, I ran that thing with Alan's company you mentioned, and reach out to us, and we'll get that scheduled.
No, that's awesome. That's such an awesome thing. I mean, one of the things we do find with direct access testing is people do oftentimes want really good, accurate information on what their data means to them, and that really can only be done on an individual one-on-one basis. It's hard to say generally this means this for everyone because each person's uniquely different, and that's great.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. I mean, this is also why I'm a fan of testing. Like we just tested a woman who was 54, I want to say, and her estrogen was pretty high. And there really isn't a reason it should be, and that could be a cancer causing situation because she's not making any progesterone to match it. So, we don't totally know why, but it's a good thing we found out. Whereas, other people, we'll see their hormones look kind of all right, and we need to go look at toxicity or something else as maybe the thing that is the issue. Okay, you just shared a little coupon code.
Yeah, so if people go to your community link, which is yourlabwork.com hormone detox shop, if they go through your community, then we'll give them $20 off any testing that they want to order. And if they're interested in ordering the Dutch, I can show them how to do that if you want me to.
Through the screen? Yeah. Do you want me to give you the screen back?
Yeah, if you give me the screen, I'll show them how they can do that.
So I'm making you the host again, right?
Yes. It's kind of scary to make me the host, but
there you go.
Okay, all right, cool. So let me just try to share this with you real quick. Just tell me if you can see that. All right. So oh, okay. Who is this person here?
Who's that good looking?
Yeah. Right, okay, right on. Okay, so the way that I just want to kind of explain this a little bit so that since we have people's attention. So the way this works is you just order the test through us. Our provider, depending on which state you're in, orders the blood test for you. And if it's a blood draw, we partner with Quest Diagnostics. They have 4,000 draw locations. And then when the results are back, you're gonna view those online. So we're gonna contact you and let you know they're ready. So there's different ways to order it. Blood tests is sort of what we're talking about with Quest Diagnostics. But if you want to order the Dutch, what you do is you go down to the hormones here, and you can click on either male or female hormones, and you see you can order blood tests individually or through packages to save money. And if you have that man in your life and you're wondering about his testosterone and estrogen, that's what you would order, your estradiol and your testosterone. But if you want Dutch tests, you just order this one down here and then use your coupon code when you check out. And that's all you got to do. So the webinar 20 is a $20 coupon code. Now, if you do order the Dutch test, I just want to explain, it is a urine test. They don't do it at Quest. We actually send you directly from Precision Analytical. We actually send you the kit, and then you send it back, and then they'll release the results to us, and we provide it to you. So that's kind of how that works. And
it can take a hot minute because you got to do it at a certain day, your cycle, if you are cycling.
Yep.
If you're not cycling, you can do it any day you want. So waiting for that and waiting for the, shipping and it takes a little longer. People get a little anxious, but it's worth it.
I'll tell you like how it works is through us. So if you order a blood test, within 24 hours, we'll issue the lab requisition, and you'll be able to go into a local draw station and get the test done. However, if you order the Dutch test, it can take 2 to 3 weeks. And that's if you're good. If you're like right on it, when you get the test, it's time for you to do it. If you have to wait a week or 2, then it's just going to delay it by that much. So just so you know what you're kind of getting yourself into. But the direct access testing platform is just something that is there as a resource for people that might want to do it. And I do want to mention that it is not available in the states that don't allow it. So
yes,
that's
please.
New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Maryland. So now here's the interesting thing about Dutch. I will say this. Even Dutch doesn't allow direct access testing. So what happens is we just had this happen. Somebody from New York ordered the Dutch test. And so I called Precision Analytical and I said, look, we can't do direct access there. And they said, well, yeah, we know. they have to actually go and collect it outside the state and then send it back to us. So there's a form in there that they sign saying, I collected this in Connecticut or whatever. I mean, they just say, I collected this outside the state. I'm just mentioning that because New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Maryland are very restrictive, and no direct access testing can be done there.
Yeah, I'll give you a little tip too. This happened with me with another company. Do not put your New York return address on there either, because they might not get back for that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe Dutch won't, but another company I work with was like, oh, we see on the envelope, New York, bye-bye.
Well, you know what? Can I just mention that I actually talked to them about that?
Oh, you did? Okay.
I want that to happen to this particular person. She went to Connecticut to get her blood work drawn because she could, and that's what she wanted to do. So that was fine. But when it came to the Dutch testing, what happened is, what I called them and I said, hey, this situation, they said, it's no problem. We can send to the New York address and we can have her mail us from the New York address. They just have to sign the paper inside the kit saying that it was not collected within, within these restrictions. Look, I get so many questions about why are these states so restrictive and what can I do about it? I don't know. I don't know what you can do about it. I guess talk to your local representatives there. I don't know. I mean, I understand why they do it is because they're always scared that, that people are going to order unnecessary tests.
But I don't really see what the problem is with that, but yeah.
46 other states do it, and it's becoming increasingly popular, particularly since everybody's getting online and reading all kinds of stuff, and people just want the information. It's data. It is your blood work, it's your urine test, and it is yours. So, I mean, people feel like they have a right to that. And anyway, so that's the whole process. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, good to know. I'm glad you mentioned those states, and there's a little bit of a workaround that you can potentially do, which is great. Yeah, we should know who we should complain to about that. I don't know if it's a medical board or who it is.
Yeah. I don't know who puts the. I mean, it's the state government that puts the restrictions on it, and I don't know if it's medical board or what. But I mean, it's everything. It's genetic testing, it's blood testing, it's the urine test, it's all the direct access stuff. It just basically took the power. It takes the power out of the consumer's hands and puts it in the medical complex hands.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it will eventually change. But in the meantime, unfortunately, in those states, you got to do a little extra work, but it's worth it.
Right. Yeah, you got to do a little extra work, but it works out okay. And I've been surprised at how much interest there is from other states and people saying, look, I'm willing to drive over there, or at Thanksgiving break, I'm going over here and I'll get it drawn over there. And I'm always surprised at the interest in people saying, look, I'm definitely interested in going outside the system. I want the testing done. So,
yeah, I'm the same way with my healthcare. I'm just like, however many times I can cut out the middleman, it's great with me.
Yeah, well,
it just makes life easier.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hopkins. I have some of the links here on the Facebook, and as I post this to YouTube and publish it later, we'll have a little more complete links, and people can always reach out to our team at help@bridgetdanner.com for any questions. Get your lab run, get empowered. Thanks again for your time, Dr. Hopkins.
Hey, yeah, really appreciate it. And I hope you'll have me on later to talk about the thyroid. I love to talk about the thyroid.
Yes, we'll do a special thyroid webinar later. You're going to have to do this meeting because I can't.
All right. We'll do it. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye from Austin, Texas. See you later.
Oh, I found my